All right, so that's me, the left one, and that's my co-creator, Mohammed Alana. We both won a Teaching Innovation Award for our Diverse Smart Worksheet. So just a really, really quick introduction. For over 20 years, we know, that BAME students are twice as likely to fail in healthcare assessments than white students. And we know there's lack of role models and representation of BAME students in classrooms and in university. And one really highly requested suggestions by BAME students is online activities, but there hasn't been that shift before COVID. And because of COVID, there has been that big shift. So our perspective, me and Mohammed's perspective is, there is an increase in BAME students enrolling into UK universities, and all students should feel welcome to UK universities regardless of their demographic group. So we wanted to sort of create a resource that was an online resource first, and that was tailored to all science students. So just a few problems, I guess. The first one is there is basic numeracy difficulties in STEM students, especially like science, various bioscience students, because they haven't had that fundamentals of mathematics before coming into university. Like sometimes it's only been like maths GCSE, and sometimes they could have needed that A-level maths to sort of understand like statistics and that. This was a big thing, COVID, because of COVID, lecturers, teachers, educators had to quickly transition from in room to online. And because the labs were closed, essentially students couldn't really experience the lab work. So they had to find another way to do it. The National Student Survey during the COVID pandemic year, there was a 4% decrease in student assessment and feedback. And that could be because of COVID, but regardless, it still happened. So, this is a no-brainer, but first year transitions to higher education is stressful to students. They're moving to another city sometimes, and, different transport, as Nigel's presentation sort of showed, BAME students, and there is that premium that some students pay. And lastly, the BAME attainment gap, even in 2021, remains at 10%, which is sort of huge. And I was kind of surprised, like one of the presentations said it would take like 60 years for it to just level out, which was really surprising. So if you kind of take all of these problems, and we wanted to kind of create sort of a one in solution, and we thought, could an inclusive blended formative lab numeracy tool help? So we worked with Learning Science, and essentially our question was, could a micropipetting smart worksheet boost first year confidence in lab skills for all? So yeah, we teamed up with Learning Science, and Angela gave a really good explanation in small worksheets. So they're an online resource, and we wanted to put our own take. So at Democracy University, one of the big practicals is micropipetting, and it's literally like the start. And sometimes students struggle, so we wanted to tackle something that it can kind of solve all science students' problems instead of just biomedical science, because that's the thing that I studied. And we wanted to add diverse avatars because we wanted to kind of have representation, and student created feedback. So I was a course representative, so I sort of knew what students wanted in the cohort. So in terms of the method, we did use inclusive avatars, and we used a website called Avatar Maker to actually make the avatars. And we had 10 avatars that were sort of randomized throughout, the smart worksheet. And we did have different pronouns and names, and we had 5 each, so they were randomized every time someone would refresh the page. And if they wanted to try the small worksheet again, it would show different people, different representations. And these are some examples of avatars, names, pronouns, different genders. We wanted to represent everyone, essentially. And these are just some examples, but we did go for a lot more. We worked with the amazing Aidan Barker from Learning Science, and he was brilliant throughout. During like our initial like planning stages, we sort of made three learning objectives. The first one was basics and numeracy, just so students can sort of know how to convert from microliters to milliliters, just so they can get the fundamental basics. Then we wanted to teach them about micropipetting tiles and how they can read and how they can sort of set up micropipetting tile. And just to sum it all up, a knowledge application question which would, kind of have micropipetting basics and numeracy and tiles together. And this is an example of like the first learning objective. Like there would be conversion. There would be a drop-down box, and students can actually pick which pipette would be correct for each volume, and even the pipette tip color. And you can see the diverse avatars, and the name would be embedded into the question. And there would be tailored feedback. This is the second learning objective, the micropipetting tiles. And yeah, there would also be helpful tips, feedback from for students, so they can actually learn while they're doing it. And this is the last learning objective, the knowledge application questions. And they would have like tailored feedback as well. Like sometimes if they're not really accurate, they would have more feedback. In terms of the survey design, we use the Likert scale, and just some questions that we asked, like if they're confident they can use a volume given in milliliters to microliters, if they can teach someone else how to use a micropipette, and if they feel anxious to use micropipettes in the lab, and if they feel confident if they can use a micropipette in lab practicals. So we also wanted to test the knowledge as well of micropipetting before and after. So we kind of gave this question before and after, just to compare if they got it wrong before, did they get it right after this smart worksheet attempt. The first one is more about accuracy, like which pipette to use. The second one's about which decimal place is correct, or where the decimal place is. In terms of how we actually deployed the smart worksheet with the survey, we used, because it was like during COVID, we had to use a virtual learning environment to kind of bring all the students together. So we used Blackboard. And first we sort of gave an introductory talk just to tell them, this was a project, and, we did all of this, kind of told them this is what to do, this is what to do. And we gave a survey before with questions, and then they actually did the micropipetting small worksheet. And then after they did the post survey, which had a few additional questions as well, the results, this is the best part, I guess. The small worksheet was enjoyable. There was no significant difference between BAME students, ethnicity and age group. So you can see in BAME in white, there wasn't any significant difference, and they all really enjoyed it. If you look in the age group, again, there was no significant difference, and they all really, really enjoyed it. Same with confidence. Again, no significant difference between learning difference and ethnicity groups. Someone with learning differences, they found it to be really, really, their confidence increased in terms of micropipette. And in ethnicity groups, again, BAME and white, students, they found it to be, well, they were really confident, and they were really inclusive. They found it to be really inclusive. So between BAME and white, there wasn't, again, no significant difference. And in gender groups, there was no significant difference. In terms of the grades, when we did the assessment scores, the pre-survey, post-survey, there was a significant difference between, it did increase significantly by 11.7%. And in terms of lab anxiety, just after one small worksheet attempt, the anxiety actually was lowered significantly. And in terms of what did they like about the small worksheet, we did ask them open questions, and they did give some comments like they found that actually helped solidify the math skills and actually built the confidence a bit. And someone really liked how it was really interactive with the characters, and the questions were really easy to understand as well. And they found the feedback really useful. It's a bit of a word cloud just to kind of really sum up how the feedback was. Like, you can see big words such as helpful, feedback, knowledge, answer, understand. In terms of what we could improve or change with our small worksheet, someone said, they could actually add animations, which would have been a really interesting take. Another one was include more challenging questions, and that was basically, we didn't really test it out, so we kind of just deployed it. And if we did, we would have known to make it a bit harder. But the big thing is, if you look at this word cloud, the big word is nothing. So that was really good. In terms of future perspectives, where this could go, could this small worksheet be deployed nationally by learning science? Maybe. Could it actually benefit nationalities where some countries don't have regular access to micropipettes? They could learn from the small worksheet really quickly. We never really saw if group work or solo study would be effective, because it was all COVID and it was all online. Everyone just did solo study, so group work would have been really interesting take. Audio feedback, would audio feedback be good for someone with learning disabilities? Like, I'm a dyslexic, so would it be a bit interesting if there were audio feedback? Could you just make this into a game, literally? How would that be? Would it be a bit more interactive? And stage feedback, I know learning science do that, but sort of have a few more feedback in terms of the stages. And yeah, that's it. Just want to mention my dad was a biomedical scientist, and he would have been really proud. So yeah, thank you.